£12.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks
How
ago.
much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Of course, we will be continuing our coverage of the Pope's funeral. That's happening at the moment in the Vatican City. But there's another big story that I think a lot of media outlets are ignoring, and that is the rap band Kneecap, which has been involved in a big row. And the row is that they have told the cheering concert goers in London to kill your local MP. They've shouted, "The only good Tory is a dead Tory." The band are facing a terror probe over pro-Hamas chants as well. They have apparently, allegedly said, "Up Hamas, up Hezbollah," which are, of course, proscribed organisations. We'll speak to a Labour MP in a second about all the issues involving the government, including whether Labour still has a woman problem, what they're going to do about the trans row, and migration as well. We'll talk about social media as well. We've got the chairwoman of the Science, Innovation and Technology Committee, and she is holding hearings at the moment about what we do in regard to social media and children. Should there be curfews, for example, at 10 o'clock at night? We'll get Cian Wara's view on that in a minute. We'll move to the debate desk after that. We'll talk about that Kneecap controversy as well. Also, we'll talk a little bit later on about what's going on in America, because net zero harms human lives. That's what Trump's envoy warns Starmer. Ed Miliband, of course, would absolutely disagree with that. What do you think of that, and indeed all the topics we're talking about today? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV or follow me at Peter Cardwell. Remember, the main number does 3 things. You can send me a voice note, you can send me a WhatsApp text message, or you can give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. And you know by now that between now and 12:30, I want to get as many calls, texts, tweets, voice notes. I want to get your voice on the air, because this is my show, but it's your show too. There's plenty to talk about here on Talk this morning. I hope we'll do that together between now and 12:30. Stay with us. Well, good morning. It's great to be here with you today. And the funeral of Pope Francis is, of course, taking place at the Vatican City. We can dip into that just very, very briefly now, just to see what is going on at the moment. And there are, of course, many, many hundreds of thousands of people who have come from right across the world, including dignitaries such as Prince William, President Zelensky, President Trump, and others who are there celebrating Francis's life. And that is going on at the moment in the Vatican City. I want to talk about the issues that the government is facing here at home with Cian Wara now. She is chairwoman of the Science, Innovation and Technology Committee and a Labour MP. She, just before we get into the politics, what are your reflections on Pope Francis this morning? Gee, we're having problems hearing you just at the moment. We'll see if we can re-establish the line, certainly. But let's just go back to Rome briefly while we do that and see what is happening. It's in the Vatican City, which is, of course, within Rome, and we will see what is happening there. We can see that there are cardinals celebrating the life of Pope Francis. Of course, he was the first, I think, for many, many years, centuries actually, Pope who wasn't from Europe. In fact, he was from Argentina, and the funeral has been going on since about 9 o'clock this morning. It's a huge, huge ceremony, of course, and there are many, many people from around the world both watching. There are 1.4 billion Catholics in the world. There are something like 6.4 million Catholics here in the United Kingdom. I'm sure many of them are watching this today. Some of them, of course, will have travelled to the Vatican City to celebrate the life of Pope Francis as well. And after today, there's going to be 9 days of official mourning, and then we're into the conclave, which means that all the cardinals from right around the world will be in Rome, will be holed up in the Sistine Chapel, and they just keep going until they get a 2/3 vote for the next pope, whoever that will be. Loads of speculation, of course, in terms of who the next pope will be, but you never really know, and occasionally people are very, very surprised by who is the new pope. But certainly the celebration today and the funeral mass is taking place of Pope Francis today, and that is taking place at the Vatican. We're trying to re-establish connection with Chion Wara. Perhaps I can have an update on that from the team. Have we got Chion Wara, guys? Is she back yet? Not just yet, but we'll get back to her in just a minute. Let me tell you about this story about... Oh, she's ready now. Chi, we've got comms established, which is always helpful in broadcasting. Chi, tell me your thoughts on Pope Francis on the funeral today.
Okay, well, I was just wanting to show you this, which is a rosary, which a friend of mine who works with Pope Francis on, sorry, it's really hard to say, but he worked with Pope Francis on addressing debt relief for developing countries. He had both blessed by Pope Francis just a couple of weeks ago, and he gave it to me just last week before the Pope died. And no, I'm not a Catholic, but it's really special to me, and I think it's special to... That's one of the reasons why his death is so special to so many people, because he really represented a great office of state, right, one of the greatest office of state, which was brought closer to people and which really seemed to care about ordinary people, and not only ordinary people, but the most marginalized and the most vulnerable. And he really made his life show that. And I think that's why his death is affecting so many people who, aren't practicing Catholics so greatly. And it's something that I think all of us who are leaders can learn from, is that the most important thing really is to be close to the people who you are representing and whose lives they're trying to change. And he really showed that in his life. And so it's deeply moving, seeing the reaction around the world, and particularly obviously in Italy to
Chi, thank you for that. We'll continue to keep an eye on what's happening in the Vatican City. But I want to turn to politics now. And your party colleague, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has been in Washington this week at the International Monetary Fund. How close do you think a deal with Trump is in regard to trade? Is that something that we can perhaps be confident about?
Well, it is. I can't really comment on exactly how far we are from a deal, but there has been really good signs in the last few days, and given how close we are to the US, culturally as well as economically, given the turmoil that we've seen in world markets and the economic headwinds that we're facing, it is really important that we get a deal, and I know that Rachel Reeves, that's why she's in the US at the moment, and the entire government is really focused on getting a deal as soon as possible. Now, obviously, there also are challenges, and I raised some of the challenges with Prime Minister when he was before our committee around trade-offs between. There's the Online Safety Act, which is coming into force, and the concerns of US tech giants. There's trade-offs around tariffs that we have on that President Trump has implemented on UK cars, for example. So there's a lot of really difficult negotiations to get.
And I know you have some hearings this week, Chi, on that online safety bill and its implementation. I just wonder what you make of what some of the tech companies have been saying, what the Technology Secretary, Peter Cardwell, your party colleague, has been saying as well, and this idea of curfews on young people, and whether, I suppose, the perennial question of whether the legislation and whether government can ever really keep up with the technology as it happens.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of so I'm an engineer. I worked in technology for 20 years before coming into Parliament. You know, technology moves fast, but it's also, governments can also move quickly. The last government moved incredibly slowly. It took 7 years to develop the Online Safety Act. So we can respond quickly to technology, and we need to do that. We need to do it in a much more aggressive way. I think because technology is having such a big influence on everybody's lives. As part of it, it's great. I mean, we're talking by Zoom. We use technology. We use smartphones, but we also need to make sure that it reflects the public interest and it reflects what people are concerned about. And I met with the online parents the bereaved parents for online safety recently, in hearing some of the examples of how their children their lives had been destroyed and in their view taken by undue engagement in social media, by grooming, or by, for example, by supporting suicidal images. But that made it, that really brought home that this is a hugely powerful force, and it'd be a force for good, but it's something that we need to shape, that governments need to step up to shaping it so that it reflects and protects the lives of the most vulnerable, and that obviously includes children. So I welcome Ofcom's stronger regulation, but I do think there's more to be done. I think there's a real confusion about what is illegal harm and what is simply, or as you say, like priority, what they call priority harm, which can still be incredibly harmful, but it is not now being blocked.
You mentioned your party leader there, Keir Starmer. He had quite a rough Prime Minister's questions on the trans row, and Rosie Duffield, your former party colleague, she's left the Labour Party, is in the Times today saying that she was bombarded with death threats online, ostracised by her Labour colleagues who, after agreeing with the view that individuals with the cervix could be described as women. She said, "I would have really liked to have had a short statement basically calling the dogs off, saying that I had Keir Starmer's backing, that he supported me as an MP." Does Labour have a women problem?
I'm a Labour woman. I'm a Labour woman through and through, and so was my mother and my grandmother before me. But I tell you two really important things, Peter. Here, the country does have, if you like, a women's problem. 51% of the population are women. We don't have 51% of the wealth. We don't have 51% of the key jobs. We don't have 51% of the conversation. So there's real challenges there to come. But the other point I really want to make, in particular in regard to Rosie, is that the discussions and the debate over trans rights and women's rights has been absolutely toxic. And Keir has said this, Keir Starmer has said, the Prime Minister has said...
Has he tried to make it less toxic?
Well, that's it. That is absolutely... Right now, we need to be making it less toxic. But women who...
Shouldn't have done so before?
Yes, I think we should. I think we could all have done more before to try to make it less toxic, and to listen to and support women's voices and trans women's voices as well in a climate of more reasonable discussion. But the vitriol and the attacks on women like Rosie, and also on trans women who wanted to make their voices heard, that has been horrendous to observe and to watch. And it was so frustrating that we weren't able to have these discussions, which are really important points about privacy, about rights, about identity. That we couldn't talk about that, in a respectful way. And just bringing it back to the Pope and Pope Francis, he always managed to talk about really critical issues in respectful and human ways, which reflected people's dignity. And we haven't done that on trans rights and women's rights. And I hope that, going forward now that we've had the ruling, now that there's been a great acknowledgement of some of these issues, that now we can have a conversation about it, which is in the interests of women who need women's spaces, but also that trans women's identity and their safety as well.
Just speaking about respecting people, I would argue there's a band of Northern Irish rappers called Kneecap that have not respected various people, including MPs. I just want to play you a clip now of what they said and shouted out at one of their recent concerts in London.
Tories. The only good Tory is a dead Tory.
So that is the rappers Kneecap saying they're effing Tories. The only good Tory is a dead Tory. Kill your local MP. In the context of David Amos's murder, in the context of Joe Cox's murder, sorry, go ahead, Chi.
That really, really upsets me. I mean, like you say, I look at David Amos's, I look at Joe Cox, so their tributes in the chamber every day that I'm there, and I know their family, their constituents, everyone who was affected by their deaths, and as an MP, and there's so many of my colleagues who have had stalking, who've had threats. I've had some threats. I haven't suffered as much as many, and so to hear them just saying kill your local MP when we are facing threats daily. But the other thing, I just think it is so it's gonna make our lives more difficult as MPs, and it's not gonna make anyone's life better. Now, if they really want to make change in this country, and we know that change needs to happen. The cost of living, the challenges that so many families are facing in Newcastle and around the country. If they have problems with the way things are now, then encourage people to do something about it, to join a political party, or to start their own political party, or whatever. But to stand on a stage and call for the death of local MPs is a way of making it a little better. I just find that absolutely disgusting, really.
Just finally, Chi, we've had a bit of reaction to your interview. Tim says, it's lovely to see an MP who's actually worked in the industry that she represents. Well done, Chi. And Jane says, I respect any Labour MP who comes on this station. However, none of them can defend the damage the Prime Minister has done since last July. And many of your audience are scared and fearful about what is going to come down the line. What would you say to Jane, Chi?
Well, Jane, since last July, and I know we've had investment in the NHS, the waiting list for Newcastle, it's so fantastic, waiting list for Newcastle for hospital appointments have gone down, had the wages go up, but the minimum wage has gone up by an increase in the pensions for the pensioners. So it's pensioners benefits. So yes, there have been challenges, and as I was talking about what's happening on the global economic markets and the imposition of tariffs and the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza, Israel, there are so many challenges in the world. We would have liked to do more, but we have made real progress in particular areas. And what is coming down the line now, I hope and I really believe, is going to be better, more prosperity and a fairer country.
But when you went into politics, Chi, did you see yourself voting for things like the winter fuel allowance to be scrapped? Is that really why you went into politics?
No, I mean, Peter, that's absolutely right. I did not go into politics to reduce the incomes of pensioners. But when we won the election, we did not expect to find the finances. Things were bad, but we didn't expect to find that all these money had been promised for all kinds of things and it hadn't been set aside, that there were big gaping holes. And I would say, the turmoil we've seen in the markets, the turmoil when Liz Truss, crashed the economy and people's mortgage payments were going up, the bond markets were, was costing to borrow. That is what happens if you don't balance the books fiscally. And that's what Rachel and this government is really focused on doing, as well as making life better for working people. Let me finish on that one.
OK, Chi, thank you very much. That's Chi Anwara there, who is an MP in Newcastle. She's also the chairwoman of the Science, Innovation and Technology Committee. What do you think of that interview? Let me know your thoughts on what Chi said. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We'll talk more about Kneecap, the Irish rappers cheering concert goers in London to kill your local MP and shouting the only good Tory is a dead Tory. We're going to talk about that more on the debate desk with Maxwell in just a second.
Take my local corner shop guy, for example. He's regularly being targeted and doesn't report it because it might be 6, 7, 8 quid that he's lost, and he knows it'll take him so much time to fill in the online form.
Right.
Quite simply, he'd rather be serving customers trying to make up his losses. Now, if that's a bit unscientific, I know, but roll that out across the country, and I'm utterly convinced there are many, many more offences of shoplifting that are just simply not being reported.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Peter, who says, morning Peter, on Ukraine I think Zelensky has to be made to stand down. He is sacrificing his army and his people to get back Crimea for his own selfish reasons, but he won't. He's a fraud. In 2014, Russia took it without a fight. There has to be a referendum and a change in constitution to give up Crimea, apparently. That is right, Peter. It's in the Ukrainian constitution, but I mean, should it happen? And certainly Zelensky doesn't want it to happen, and many other people think that the illegal invasion of Crimea and the rest of Ukraine, that the outcome of those peace negotiations should not in any way reward Putin. Tim says, can you ask Chi Anwara why Labour hasn't stopped the boats? I'm fuming. I've asked Labour that on many occasions previously, Tim, but yeah, I should probably, if we'd had more time, I would have asked that. Jane says, yet another Labour politician spouting sound bites. The Ukraine war was going on before they came to power, but it's okay for them to use that as an excuse, but not for the previous government. Oh, and making life better for working people. Unbelievable. Do they really believe the rubbish they talk, says Jane. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But I just want to dip in again to the funeral, the Pope's funeral at the Vatican. That is continuing. There are, of course, hundreds of thousands of people there in St. Peter's Square mourning the Pope. That is happening as we speak. And I'm going to talk about that now briefly on the debate desk with Maxwell Marlowe, who's a political commentator, as is Charlie Rowley. Maxwell, your reaction and to what you've seen this morning. It's all very procedural. It's all lots of ceremony and so on. But Pope Francis, many people reflecting on his remarkable life.
Absolutely, and it's actually quite a toned-down funeral. If you looked at previous funerals for popes, so Pope Benedict, for example, very, very extravagant, lots of gold, even more flowers than are being shown at the moment. But I think it does reflect his life in many ways. He was a very humble man. He was a Franciscan, which is the first pope to be a Franciscan in a very long time. I believe actually the first. So I think it's an amazing life and much to learn from. But I don't think there will be a moderate or a liberal in power after the conclave. I think they're going to move towards the conservative section as the world turns to the right.
Charlie, your reflections?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, look, very moving scenes, no less. Thousands of people have flocked to go and see the Pope lying in state. They'll be watching, millions of people around the world watching this moving event today. And as Maxwell says, actually looking forward to who is going to be chosen as the next pope, and what direction does that take for the church? Lots of questions within that, but we'll have to wait and see.
Lots of questions for Labour as well. In the Times today, Rosie Duffield, the MP who left Labour, saying that she was treated like a pariah on the trans issue by former colleagues who haven't changed. She says when she was bombarded with death threats online, ostracised by her Labour colleagues when she said simply that people with the cervix should be described as women. She just wanted a bit of help from her leader. She said, I would have really liked to have had just a short statement basically calling the dogs off, saying that I had Keir Starmer's backing, that he supported me as an MP, but I didn't ever have that, and I was told very clearly by an advisor that that was something he would never do. Charlie, your reaction to that?
Well, she's absolutely right. I mean, the barefaced cheek of the Prime Minister to go on holiday and come back to say, on the back of a Supreme Court ruling, to say, oh, I agree with the court, having disagreed fundamentally, clearly, on several occasions and in very, very many different ways, not being able to articulate what a woman is. Rosie Duffield has been consistent in her views. We saw over the last couple of days the WhatsApp group within Labour MPs that were still trying to undermine or change or work around the Supreme Court ruling. They didn't like it, they didn't agree with it. You know, poor old Rosie Duffield, who's been saying this for some time, would love to be back in the Labour Party. But the Labour Party excluded her because of this issue, because they jumped on the bandwagon without getting their facts right, without being able to find a coherent policy view that accepting that women's rights are something, by the way, but you wouldn't have known it. But you can have women's rights and you can have single-sex spaces alongside a coherent policy or a coherent set of views in order to ensure that trans people do have their protections and do have the quality of life and equality that they're striving for. It just means that the common sense ruling has come down that actually, you know, women or trans women, people that are born male that transition to female or identify as women, cannot compete in male sports, for example.
Although we'll see what happens with the London Marathon tomorrow, because there is a lot of controversy around that as well. It is tomorrow, isn't it? Or maybe next week?
I think it's next week.
Next week, apologies. Yeah. Maxwell, what do you make? It is tomorrow. It is tomorrow.
It is tomorrow.
Yes. What do you make of Rosie Duffield's comments?
I mean, it's completely unsurprising. The left have just gone into total histrionics over this, and they have done for so long. And you spoke recently about, you know, Kneecap, for example. We're
going to get to that.
We'll get to that as well. But, you know, this is just indicative of the immense sort of perverse nature of these kind of very postmodern ideas around gender and around identity that have just totally captured, you know, people's psyche, and people are acting in extraordinary ways. And how Rosie Duffield's been treated has been a great shame, I think, upon the Labour Party, and indeed kind of across parliamentary democracy as well. I mean, I haven't seen that much support for her on the other benches as well over this period. She just seems to be, I think she's right, she's been treated like a total pariah. I also think it's remarkable that this needed to go to the Supreme Court in the first case. This is, completely common sense.
Is that convenient for Keir Starmer to say, oh, it's the Supreme Court, they've decided nothing to do with us? Because in theory, he could legislate.
He could, yeah, but as a lawyer, he wants to follow, the absolute line of our legal system, and, it's a really easy get-out-of-jail-free card for him. Now he can just say, it's all settled, it's been settled, by the Supreme Court, absolutely fine, nothing more to do with me, well, let's move on. I think there will be some movements on the backbenches of the Labour Party to try and, push a bill to try and to legislate and overrule this. I don't think it will go that far. I mean, we're seeing, the absolute power of what I would call popular democracy, that being, the great Freedom Association of Mumsnet, for example, coming together to, cause a real big shift back against this quite far left, trans ideology movement. It's happened in the US, it's happening in Europe, it's happening here, and I don't think it's politically convenient for the new Blue Labour we see under Morgan McSweeney in number 10 to basically bring this issue back up again. They want it settled. So great excuse for Keir Starmer to bury it and move forward, but let's see what happens with Rosie Duffield, who hopefully will be let back into the Labour Party.
If she wants to be. Maxwell, thank you for that, and thank you, Charlie. We'll come back to you in a minute. You mentioned Kneecap there. These are these rappers from my part of the world, from Northern Ireland, who have had a huge concert at the Electric Ballroom in London. They have told the revellers there, kill your local MP. The only good Tory is a dead Tory. They've now been referred to the police, of course, and previously in November they appeared to shout, up Hamas, up Hezbollah, and were draped in a Hezbollah flag. There was a chant as well of ooh ah Hezbollah. Well, as we know, Hezbollah and Hamas are prescribed organisations. How are they getting away with this? Another detail in all of this is that the group was awarded £14,250 of public money as well. Kemi Badenoch tried to stop it. Labour said they weren't going to contest it, and because they didn't believe it was in the public interest. We'll get into all of that in just a second and rewatch the clip where they called for the death of MPs. Really? Is that something that's responsible? Of course it isn't. They should be have the full force of the law against them. We'll get reaction from Maxwell and indeed from Charlie and from you as well. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Trevor's been in touch from Harrow. He says, "Morning, Peter. I am raging. Your Labour MP earlier on, Sian Wara, immediately started on fictional deficit figures that we had. If the finances were in such a bad state, why would you go ahead and give off British sovereign territory and pay billions for the privilege of doing so?" I think Trevor's referring to the Chagos Islands there. "The Labour Party is out of its depth. It's clear to anyone that they hate Britain, especially the white working class. How do I know this? I've seen the police training school where rioters are represented with a white mark and a Christian cross on the back and a Union flag," says Trevor. I haven't seen that myself, Trevor, but it's disturbing if that is the case. We're also talking about the Irish rappers, Northern Irish rappers, Kneecap. Now, kneecapping, as you may remember, or you may know from history, is this horrific process, summary justice, where people have a bullet through the leg if they fall on the wrong side of the paramilitaries or drug gangs. I've interviewed people who have been kneecapped previously. It is absolutely not a joke. It is not a funny thing. It is a horrific form of it's not even a form of justice, an attempt at justice if you get on the wrong side of the paramilitaries. Punishment, beatings, kneecapping. It's horrendous. So this band, very, very popular band called Kneecap, are controversial for lots of reasons. At the O2 Forum in Kentish Town, in November 2024, one of the band members appeared to shout, "Up Hamas, up Hezbollah." He was draped in the Hezbollah flag. There was also a chant of "Ooh ah Hezbollah." Now, more recently, at the Electric Ballroom in London, they had a concert. They're rappers. They had a concert in London where they talked about killing your local MP and saying the only good Tory is a dead Tory. Yes, really. And this is a band that was given an arts grant of our money, taxpayers' money, your money, my money that we're paying, of £14,250 of an arts grant. Let's have a look at what they said at the concert.
Tories. The only good Tory is a dead Tory.
Kill your local MP. The only good Tory is a dead Tory. We're going to have reaction from a Conservative MP in just a few minutes' time, but we're back in the debate desk with Maxwell and Charlie. Charlie, where do you even start with this? We've had, actually, before I come to you, we've had some reaction. And David says, "I wonder how many months it will take the police to investigate the Irish rappers to establish if any legal action is required." Sean in Edinburgh says, "This bunch of filth, this kneecap mob, aren't a hip-hop band. They glorify not only Hamas and the Palestinian cause, but glorify murdering MPs and the troubles in Northern Ireland. I'm glad the United States have revoked their visas while they were touring. And why on earth has the UK government granted them an arts grant that Kemi Badenoch tried to block at the end of last year?" We'll get into that arts grant in a minute or two. Peter in Croydon also says Lisa Nandy gave them the money, essentially decided to not contest a legal case where they said they weren't going to get it. This is taxpayers' money given to people who, in that video, are very clearly saying kill MPs, and the only good Tory is a dead Tory. Maxwell.
It's hard to even put words, to that. I mean, I'm reminded of Sir David Amess, obviously, on this one, completely let down by the police, completely let down by the security services. And as soon as as soon as his murder had happened, people weren't blaming the fact that this was on a Islamist terrorist. People turned around, "Oh, this is just hateful messaging on social media." But blame the big social media companies. I can see this moving very quickly in that direction by people who just don't want to talk about the fact that the money they've been given, by the way, is worth one taxpayer's entire yearly tax contribution. So one whole taxpayer, one of your talk listeners, had worked their entire year to give this hateful mob, this money. I think is an utter disgrace. I think the police probably will investigate. There's been a lot of talk at the moment.
They've been referred to counter-terror police. I also wonder what would have happened if a band had said the same thing, had said the only good Tory is a dead Tory, and said, for example, that they were in favour not of Hamas and Hezbollah, but a right-wing, a fascist organisation in the UK, for example. I would imagine the police would have come down on them like a ton of bricks, and rightly so.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Hezbollah and Hamas are fascist organisations by very definition. They just happen to be in a political hotspot in the Middle East. So of course all the rules are off apparently. But I think it's a disgrace. They should full force the law. I think this is obviously incitement to violence, which is, as we know, very illegal. So I wouldn't wouldn't be surprised if they're handed sentences for this. It's completely disgraceful.
Well, let's hope so. We'll talk to a Conservative MP in a minute. We talked to a Labour MP, got her reaction a little bit earlier on in the programme. Charlie, what's your reaction? You know all about, as a former special advisor, you know all about MPs having to have protection officers and knowing the threat that is there to very high profile MPs and to those that are less high profile as well.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, if I was even going to attempt to make light of it, which you shouldn't, but if it was a Saturday night in the pub, I would say, well, at least the Tories are still getting some sort of, people are talking about them after the total wipeout that they've had electorally. But this is disgusting. It is grotesque. The comments that were made on stage should absolutely feel the full force of the law. Accusations again will be at Number 10's door if nothing happens or if it takes too long to investigate over two-tier policing. If you can police and lock up people for some comments on Twitter or X, this is hard and fast evidence of people inciting to kill MPs, particularly Tory MPs. So if Number 10 doesn't move on this, if the Home Secretary doesn't get involved, call up the local PSNI, I think it would be, or if the comments were made...
I think it's counter-terrorism police because the comments took place in London, so presumably it's SO19 in London.
Or even better. Then they should absolutely follow through with it, and these people should not be allowed, because they should be in a prison cell, to purport those comments anywhere else.
We have been, of course, the production process of this programme is to ring round a number of MPs and to ask them to come on. Some, of course, can, some can't. But Mark Francois, who's actually joining us tomorrow on the programme, Shadow Armed Forces Minister, he sent us a voice note. We're going to speak to a Conservative MP a bit later on, about 20 minutes' time. But Mark Francois has reacted to this, and this is what he has said in a voice note to us this morning.
What these so-called pop stars have said about murdering Tory MPs is beyond despicable. My best friend in Parliament, Sir David Amess, was murdered in the line of duty, serving his constituents, as indeed was the Labour MP Joe Cox. What these people have said is unconscionable, and I hope they will be fully held to account for inciting violence, including against people in public life. What they have done is simply inexcusable.
Well, that's Mark Francois, the Conservative MP. It's a really interesting point that this is a very, very popular band. People like their music. They are due to perform at the Shangri-La stage, at the Westholt stage, and at the Westholt stage in Glastonbury this year. I wonder what Emily Evis, who organises Glastonbury, thinks about this. Should she reconsider this? I think she should. Bob in Cheltenham has also been in touch with a message saying Kneecap's brand is to be controversial. It's their MO. I'm afraid at many concerts that attract young people and at festivals like Glastonbury, it's considered cool to hate the Tories. What was said by the band at the concert is despicable, irresponsible and potentially criminal. I'm just glad I didn't spend any money watching their film. Great show as always, he says. Fiona says, regarding the sick rap group, let's remind ourselves we have a number of people currently in prison for over 31 months for sending tweets. I know which one is worse. Great show. Lots to discuss on all of this. We'll be talking to a Conservative MP a little bit later on in the programme. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. There's plenty of time to get your voice on the air between now and 12:30. Lots that we're talking about this morning. We're talking about migration. We're talking about Rosie Duffield. We're talking about this Northern Irish band, Kneecap. Let's just play one more time what they said. We've bleeped out, of course, the bad words, but this is what the sick message they had to their fans at a concert, normal concert that a lot of young people were at in London.
Tories. The only good Tory is a dead Tory.
Susan says this is representative of the breakdown in society. The social contract is broken when taxpayers' money goes towards supporting terrorist supporters and vicious thugs like this, says Susan. That is her view. This is an organisation, this is a band that has said effing Tories, the only good Tory is a dead Tory, kill your local MP. They've also praised Hamas and Hezbollah, and they've had at concerts, they had the Coachella concert, big concert in California. They had the slogans, Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people, F Israel, free Palestine. And this is a group that's got £14,250 of your money in a government grant. Kemi Badenoch tried to make that not happen. Then Labour took over. They decided it was not in the public interest to contest that. Badenoch described the move as yet another cowardly decision after giving away the Chagos Islands. Labour will always capitulate rather than defend UK interests. Very, very interesting thoughts on this. Welcome 0344 499 1000. We'll be back on the desk with the debate desk with Maxwell and Charlie in just a minute.
We were subjugated to their lawmaking by majority vote in the Council of Ministers of making of the laws against the United Kingdom, and at the same time we were actually being put in a position of being subjugated to their decision making and their lawmaking. That is the key position, and that is what is going on at the moment. As far as I can see, they're going to take us back if they possibly can.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's talk about Keir Starmer and migration, because he is going to rent homes for Channel migrants. This is Serco, one of the three private contractors working for the Home Office, is offering landlords 5-year guaranteed full rent deals to house asylum seekers at whose expense? Well, yours, obviously. In promotional literature, the firm boasts it is already responsible for more than 30,000 asylum seekers in an ever-growing portfolio of more than 7,000 properties. This and Friday night, Labour was accused of taking homes away from British people and giving a better deal in favour of illegal immigrants than people who've worked, lived and paid taxes all their lives. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, saying this lays bare Labour's shameful failures because they've let in record numbers of illegal immigrants so far. Via Serco, the government is offering better than market terms to landlords to house them. There is a housing crisis in this country. Where are we going to put everybody who's here already, never mind more people coming illegally across the Channel who have contributed nothing to this country but are getting free accommodation? We're on the debate desk with Maxwell Marlowe and Charlie Rowley, political commentators both. Charlie, what do you make of this?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a total slap in the face to hardworking Brits that either need housing and accommodation. It's an absolute slap in the face to, you know, when we hear stories about veterans, people that have served this country and signed up to serve this country, who are in need of accommodation or are sleeping rough that can't get the housing. The idea that the Prime Minister and this Labour government are offering above market or much more better market rates to landlords to house migrants over and above anybody else, I just think is a joke, and one that will really irk with the public.
Maxwell, what do you think?
So, year to date, to 2024, we had 100,000 asylum seekers come into the UK, and at that same period, we had 100,000 young people experience or be at risk of homelessness. And I think it is indicative of this government's, views towards the asylum seekers and the asylum system, that the asylum seekers get precedent over young people who want to, start a life and a family in the UK, in the country which they're born. I think it is utter disgrace. It's also the fact that this will displace so many working families and young people across the country who are looking to rent, and landlords who have got the security of a 5-year deal to house on the taxpayer dime tens of thousands of asylum seekers. So people will be moved out of their local areas or where they want to go to work. Obviously, asylum seekers aren't allowed to get a job, so. Or earn for income in the UK, and we know that these periods wherein they're waiting for a return from the Home Office, that can take years. So we're basically just having even more subsidy for people who aren't able to work, aren't able to give back and contribute, and it is working people who be the sharp end of the stick on this one. I think it's a total disgrace, and we just need to get our asylum system back in order and to get Britain working again for working people, because there was an amazing case yesterday actually of a Labour councillor, I believe in Wandsworth, who turned down a huge development which is going to house lots of working people on the South Bank of London, despite the fact we're in this housing crisis where we've got 5 million too few houses for the British people, turned down because it wouldn't fit with the area. This is, it's just going to continue to make the problem worse and worse until the government can get a hand on it, which I don't think they'll be able to.
Angela's been in touch on this and says, I do hope that all people living in the UK will be offered rental homes, not just migrants. Thousands are currently on local housing lists, some in dreadful temporary accommodation with young children. Angela, you're absolutely right. I used to work on this issue, as did Charlie Rowley. I was advised the government on homelessness for a while when I was in government. We managed to get rough sleeping, people living on the streets, down by 9% in about a year and a half, which I was very proud of, but there's a lot more to do even when we left. The fact is that there's a lot of people in temporary accommodation who are homeless. We think of people often as homeless as on the street, but actually in this case they have a roof over their head. It's just not a particularly good one. I remember the head of one of the major housing charities said to me one time, Peter, the babies don't learn to crawl because there is not enough space for them to do so. Yet we are giving asylum seekers homes who've contributed nothing to this country. It doesn't add up, Charlie Rowley, and I think Keir Starmer's going to have to do something about it. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right, as was that last text message, because the number of people that are on waiting lists, as you say, is ever growing. And what does it say to, about the government? And what do people sitting at home, what do they think that civil servants are doing most days when they're actually in the office? Who on earth is coming up with this idea to say, what's a good idea? Let's see what housing supply that we have in the country, and let's round it up and reach out to those landlords and house asylum seekers, people that might even actually be refused asylum. If they come into this country illegally, they'll have their claim processed, but they might ultimately be deported. So they may have no right to be here at all. What does it say that the government of the United Kingdom, whatever its colour or stripe, because I'm sure this would have come from civil servants that work for any government that gets elected, that somebody somewhere is thinking, what a good idea, and it gets to a level up the food chain, and there are many chains, as you know, but it gets to a point where it's obviously reported on that somebody is thinking that this is an absolute vote winner, or this is a great idea. I think people right across the country would be up in arms that, as you say, we've got such a long list of people waiting for accommodation, supported housing, or whatever else. young people that just can't get on the housing ladder, all of a sudden there'll be landlords up and down the country rubbing their hands together to say, yep, I'll take this deal on from the government. I've got a 5-year tenure. The standards probably, perhaps in that particular rented accommodation might slip. You'll end up having particular migrants that might complain about the housing stock that the housing that they've been offered. They'll want to be moved out. This will generate headlines no end and will only play into the hands of other political parties that want to make capital out of it.
Jane's been in touch and said this home story has been going on for years. Pity it has taken some sections of the media a long time to catch up. Tony is in Lancashire and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Tony, you're on not just with me, but with Maxwell and with Charlie as well. What point would you like to make this morning?
Yeah, good evening. It's a brilliant show this. I like this show.
Thank you.
Anyway, yeah, all these illegals, what you've been on about, where they're getting priorities to housing, to everything else. They get free driving lessons. They get, I don't know, they seem to get everything free. If you ask me, right, if you were to go to Australia unannounced without your passport or anything, they'd have you shipped back before you can say boo-hoo. So why is this country not doing it? It's because the bloody government is too soft to say anything. And if you ask me, I'm kind of a bit worried, because if they keep letting more migrants in, housing more migrants where our own people can't get on housing ladder or anything, there's going to be riots. End of. I think.
Well, there have been riots, Tony. There have been people who've been very, very annoyed with the immigration aspect in this country. Do you think the government has any plan, Tony, to get to sort this out in some way?
No, I don't think they've got any plans. Only person I think who's willing to do something is Nigel Farage, to be honest.
Okay.
I think he's the only person who will do something when he gets to be MP. I'm hoping he does before him.
Well, he's an MP now, certainly. Maybe he'll go higher than that. Maybe reform will be part of the next government, or even just the next government themselves. We'll see what happens. Tony, thanks for your thoughts on that. I mean, Charlie, the frustration is palpable from Tony and many other people who've got in touch with us as well on this particular issue. What should the government do you think? How can they solve it?
Well, drop this policy for one. Bring back a deterrent for two. I know people weren't very in favour necessarily of Rwanda. It costed too much, and those flights didn't get off the ground. But they didn't take. There wasn't enough time for us to actually see that policy to come to fruition. But it needs a narrative to make it absolutely clear that anybody that comes into this country illegally will not get exactly as your last caller was talking about, free housing, benefits, driving licence, free day trips, out to immerse in society even before your claim's been processed. We need to be tougher on this issue, so the government needs to establish a narrative as to what is the deterrent for coming into the UK, how hard the process is claiming asylum. So it needs to set that up, but it also then needs to just talk up how it's fixing the problem. So busting the backlog, increasing. I mean, talked about a border force. We've not seen anything to do with that.
Well, they do have their asylum and immigration bill going through, but there's an interesting aspect just finally with Maxwell Marlowe. Maxwell, maybe you could just take us through this issue. Trump beginning removing migrants and sending them to Rwanda. Of course, we had that idea. It hasn't happened, but Trump seems to be doing it.
It's not just Rwanda. I mean, let's look at why we chose Rwanda in the first place. So Rwanda came to us. They want, they're very happy to house, asylum seekers, illegal immigrants, and for processing by the Home Office in obviously Central Africa. So what happened there was under the last government, we were looking at this plan for a long time, wherein we would, onboard the asylum seekers in the UK and then ship them out to Rwanda for processing. If their asylum grant was seen to be okay and legal, they would be shipped back to the UK for proper, kind of rehabilitation in the UK. If not, they would be sent back to their home country, or they would remain in Rwanda. We would cover the whole bill nonetheless. So it's not the perfect scheme, I'll tell you that much, but it certainly was better than displacing Brits whilst their claim was being processed. Now, for Donald Trump, he's a little bit concerned that the El Salvadorian jails, where he's sending those illegal immigrants coming into the US from Mexico or from Canada, they're getting a bit full. So he needs to find somewhere else. He's going out to Rwanda. He's also looking at other locations around the world as well. But he's very clear that that's his policy to remigrate and repatriate, whereas in the UK, this has actually been the case since 1998, Peter. I mean, that this is a Blairite policy which, you know, ever since then, no government has decided to change or touch. It's only reached a palpable heat now. We've seen some pretty amazing policy to try and push back against this. You know, the Foreign Office, you know, commissioning adverts in Albania to say to Albanians, don't come here, Britain's not a great place to live, actually, which is some amazing tourist board activity. So, Rwanda's interesting. I don't think it's coming back for the UK, though.
Maxwell, thank you, and thank you to Charlie Rooley as well, political commentators both on the debate desk this morning. Loads to discuss. Let us know what you think about Labour, about migration, about this horrific, horrible rapper band Kneecap telling us to kill MPs. We'll be talking to one MP next, Conservative. We spoke to a Labour MP a bit earlier in the programme about what she thinks. We'll hear from the Conservatives in just a second and what can and should be done about it, not least by counter-terrorism police. Let us know your thoughts too, 0344 499 1000.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12.60. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
A couple of weeks.
Ritz.
Couple of weeks
How
ago.
much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Keeping it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company and your calls, texts and tweets, which we'll get to, of course, many of them between now and 12:30. If you want to get in touch, the main number is, of course, 0344 499 1000. We're talking about a story that's been ignored by a lot of the media, and that is that Kneecap, which are a band of rappers from Northern Ireland, well, they have decided to tell the people who've gone to their concert in London that they should kill their local MP and that they should F the Tories. That is their message. They've also previously talked about being in favour of Hamas and Hezbollah. So the counter-terrorism police have been told about that. We'll be talking about that with a Conservative MP in just a second. I want your thoughts on that story as well. We'll talk about migration as well. Keir Starmer wanting to rent homes for Channel migrants. Trump has actually begun removing migrants to Rwanda, which some say is a humiliation for the United Kingdom after we spent £700 million on an attempt to do that and a failure to do that. Lots to discuss, as I say. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, and you know by now, I'm sure, that the main number does three things. You can send me a voice note, you can send me a WhatsApp text message, or you can give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss here on Talk. Let's just remind ourselves of what these scumbags decided to tell their concert goers. They're performing at Glastonbury to presumably more people than were in the Electric Ballroom in London. They said the only good Tory is a dead Tory. This is Kneecap, a very popular rap band. We still have old men in London making decisions that affect my life in Ireland. We're still under British occupation in Ireland. Even worse, they're effing Tories. The only good Tory is a dead Tory. Kill your local MP. Let's have a look at this video evidence of what Kneecap have been saying.
Tories. The only good Tory is a dead Tory. Kill your local MP.
Mark has been in touch and says, Kneecap comments need police attention for sure. They're outrageous, they're dangerous. Surely the police can charge them. That's Mark in Hong Kong, who has talked about that. Travis Flanagan in Norfolk says, hi Peter, as a fellow proud Irishman whose family hailed from Saintfield in County Down, I can say that the band Kneecap are a disgrace to us and our people. We've moved on so much since our troublesome past of hatred and segregation. I've known about this band for some years now, and all they do is spread hatred and political and religious bias. Kneecap and Conor McGregor have shamed our great country in recent times in the view of Travis. Thank you for that. We're going to speak to a Conservative MP in just a second, but first of all, I just want to play a quick voice note from Perry, who's been in touch on Kneecap.
Hi Peter, yeah, disgusting behaviour, really wrong and bad. But you remember when Joe Brand said about throwing acid over Nigel Farage? They all thought it was rather funny. I mean, what happened to her? Nothing ever happened to her. You know, she weren't threatened to be thrown into prison for such disgusting behaviour. You know, it's just funny how people are making more fuss about it because it's Conservatives.
Thank you very much indeed to Perry on Kneecap. If you want to send a voice note in, you know the number by now, 0344 499 1000. Well, Sir Geoffrey Clifton Brown is a Conservative MP in the North Cotswolds. Geoffrey, this is something that I'm sure is perturbing and worrying many people, but when you see a very popular band, one that's been invited to Glastonbury to play on one of the main stages in a few months' time, saying the only good Tory is a dead Tory, kill your local MP, what goes through your mind, Geoffrey?
Well, good morning, Peter, and it's great to be on your show. This is no special pleading of MPs. After all, we've had 2 MPs in recent years actually killed, and many of my female colleagues, particularly female, I regret to say, have had vile trolling online, and many of them death threats as well. So if we want MPs to do the job, I think it's up to the state to provide proper protection. And indeed, we do get a lot of advice on security matters, but inflaming matters in this way that Kneecap have done, I think is just totally unacceptable. And I think the first step we ought to ask is the organisers of Glastonbury is to withdraw the appearance of Kneecap at that festival. That would send a very powerful message to that band and any others who may be thinking about coming up with the similar lyrics, not to do it. It's completely unacceptable. It's a breach of the peace. It's threats. It's every sort of crime, possibly even up to incitement and terrorism. So let's ask the owners of Glastonbury to withdraw their appearance.
I think that's a very, very good point. And certainly, what would you like the police to do in this regard? We have the video evidence. They've got form. They have appeared to certainly glorify Hamas, Hezbollah. They've talked about their views on Israel. They're entitled to their views in regard to Israel and the Palestinians. What they're not entitled to do is to glorify prescribed organisations like Hamas and Hezbollah, which they appear to have done on previous occasions as well.
Well, it's totally illegal. And I would expect now the police have well and truly got this evidence. They should fully investigate it, and I would expect that if they find that it's true, that there is proper evidence, that it would go forward to the Crown Prosecution Service, who would take a prosecution, and I hope these people would be convicted and sentenced and appropriately sentenced in jail for doing it. It's quite unacceptable, and it is hate crimes, these incitements. It really is totally unacceptable.
What do you think it is that gives people like Kneecap the, some would say, not quite permission, but certainly to feel as if they will get away with it, to feel as if they can say these things, they can make these inflammatory comments, and they can make these, I would argue, insightful comments as well, particularly about Conservatives?
Well, I think there are two things to this, Peter, if I may. The first is that I think all of us who are in the public life, in whatever sphere, of course, particularly MPs, but everybody else who has a public audience has a duty to be very, very careful what they say. Particularly bands like Kneecap, who have an influence with young people, impressionable young people, inciting them perhaps to go and do the same thing, or even worse, commit some sort of dreadful crime. So I think people in the public domain have to be very, very careful. And I also think that they are, as it were, performing to young people who are often very impressionable. And I think we have to be very careful about that too.
How much of a threat do you feel under when you're going around your daily life? I mean, Westminster is sort of a fortress. There are loads of men with big machine guns. There is lots of security going in and out of the building. Rightly, it is a protected building. It's a royal palace. The Downing Street as well is a very protected street. There are lots of counter-terror police there. There are lots of people who can help you if you run into a problem. It's very different, isn't it, Jeffrey, when you're in the constituency, when you're running around, when you're going to village halls, you're going to all sorts of places where, you know, people know you're coming. They can probably see, you know, the local MP's going to be at this event or opening this event or talking to people at this event. That's a very different life. It must feel as if there is a secure bit of your job and a very unsecure bit of your job as well.
Well, we do receive a lot of security advice, some of which is probably not advisable to discuss on air.
Absolutely.
But I have changed the way I work. For example, I used to go to a village hall, as you say, and hold surgeries, and I used to allow anybody to turn up. Now I do all my surgeries online. If there's a particular person who needs to see me, I would go and see that person, but I would always take somebody else with me in case something goes wrong. So and my office and myself are constantly in touch with the police. If we are going to a big public meeting, I had one the other day, I will notify the police so that they are at least aware of it. So if something happens, they can respond quite quickly. But I try never nowadays to advertise in advance, unless it's absolutely necessary, that I'm going to be at a public meeting, where it's going to be, what time it's going to be. I would perhaps say that I'm going to be at a public meeting in such and such a town on such and such a date, and wouldn't release the actual time and place until a fairly short time before, so that, you know, people don't have time to plan a crime. But all of these things all add up together, and every single one of my colleagues will be taking their security, and particularly their staff security, very carefully indeed. We have now measures in our offices in the constituency for our staff, because often they're in isolated places on their own. All of these things have to be taken into account, and we do get advice on them.
And it shouldn't happen, Jeffrey, should it? It shouldn't be the way, and the old way, where people could walk into an MP's office, perhaps even see the MP in that office and just have a chat with them, or go to a surgery, go to a village hall. That's something that is part of our democracy, is something that has been a cherished part of our democracy. But, you know, you and many other people as well, I'm not in any way blaming you for this. I totally accept and completely support you in the measures you've taken. But it's worrying, it's dangerous, but it's also sad as well, isn't it?
It's very sad. It is really, really sad. I mean, I love my job, otherwise I wouldn't have been doing it for 32 years. And if you love being an MP, you love hearing from people, hearing what they're getting up to in their daily lives, where they've got problems, where they've got successes, where their family have got successes, all these things. You know, and I do, when I bump into in the supermarkets, people will come up to me and say, "Hello, Jeffrey, I like what you said on this," or "I didn't," you know, whatever they have to say, I'm always interested. But it is sad that I can't say that I'm going to be in such and such a village hall for the next hour. Do come and see me. I just can't do that anymore.
How seriously do you think both your party and the police will take these comments by Kneecap? Well,
I think they wouldn't have needed these comments by Kneecap to to prompt them into. Every single member of Parliament will have a police contact. They will have talked about their and their staff security. I do it on a fairly constant basis. Every time I have an update from my local police inspector, he will always end and he's telling me about what's going on in the constituency, but he will always end and say, Geoffrey, have you any concerns about your own personal security? And I imagine if that's happening to me, that's happening to my colleagues up and down the country.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown. He is the MP, Conservative MP for the North Cotswolds. We've heard from Labour and the Conservatives on this very, very worrying development. This is Kneecap, Northern Irish rappers telling cheering concert goers to kill your local MP and shout the only good Tory is a dead Tory. Honestly, what on earth were they thinking? It's so completely irresponsible. The police should take action immediately. Frank has been in touch. Frank Etchells from Bingley in West Yorkshire says, if you want to know what's wrong with this country, then it's summed up when you introduced the very popular band Kneecap. I don't blame you for that preface. It's the fact that it's true that leads me to despair. We're on the edge of social collapse. Nick in Winchester says, enough is enough. Don't give these idiots the oxygen of publicity. I've never heard of Kneecap. Now everyone will have heard of them. Well, listen, it doesn't take me to publicise them. They're a very, very popular band. Nick, you may not know them. I don't know their music, I must say. I'm not going to listen to it. I'm certainly not going to go to one of their concerts and give them a penny of my money. But they're saying any publicity, Nicholas says, any publicity is good publicity for these animals. Let the authorities deal with it. If they don't, then highlight again, but do not mention the name of the band. Nick, I think this is something I'm happy to mention the name of because I'm not giving them any more publicity than they already have. They are a hugely popular band. You may not have heard of them. I know that I probably hadn't, except for the controversy. They're very, very worrying, not only in regard to what they say about people, about Conservatives, about MPs here, but also in regard to what they've said about the Middle East as well. And they have form on this. November last year, for example, they projected slogans at Coachella, for example, the music festival in California. That was, on Easter weekend. Israel is committing genocide. No, they're not. Against the Palestinian people, and F Israel, free Palestine. They've done the same thing previously in November, where they one of the members shouted "Up Hamas, up Hezbollah," which of course was draped in the terror group's flag. And we know, of course, that they are proscribed illegal organisations. Charlie is on the line from Cheshire. I know you have some thoughts on this, Charlie. What would you like to say?
How you doing, Cardi?
Good to talk to you, Charlie.
And you, mate. First of all, those of us who've heard about this band have known of them for a while now. And I should say this, Peter, that some of the friends I know back home who would be natural Sinn Féin voters, supporters, don't hold with these people at all.
Yeah.
Having said that, a lot do, as you will know, but it's important to say that not all do. People from my side of the community have no time for them, never have done, even if they like rap music. But also, I'm thinking this is a great opportunity for the Home Office and particularly the police to clean the slate, so to speak. I mean, we look around at people, never mind Southport and Lucy Connolly, etc., etc., etc. People knocking on your door at 3 o'clock in the morning because of hurty tweets and all the rest of it. And they have an opportunity now to get these three guys and get them in the nick, lock them up and charge them. Because if it was the other way around, or if somebody was shouting, a band was shouting about supporting the UDA or something like that, do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Or alternatively, right-wing organisations in the UK as well. This would be something that they would absolutely swoop on. Why do you think Kneecap think they can get away with it, Charlie?
Well, they're smart boys, so they are. Any publicity for a rap punky band is going to help their cause. I would be surprised if Glastonbury cancel them because they know that they'll have a following by brainless young blank wits who wouldn't even know where Northern Ireland is on the bloody map. So, that they'll sell out. Because, as you well know, Peter, young people of today don't even watch the news. Never mind, if you give them an atlas, a blank atlas, and said, point out where Birmingham is or point out where Belfast is, they wouldn't have a bloody clue. So those are the people who are supporting this band. As far as I'm concerned, those of us who are wise enough and grown up enough just know that they're, what we think of them. But they're smart boys, so they are,
Yeah.
I feel sorry for the boy who walks around in a balaclava 24 hours a day. That can't be very comfortable.
Well, no, it can't, but it's giving him plenty of money as well. We've had this government grant of £14,000 as well. Charlie, thanks for your thoughts. I appreciate that. That's Charlie in Cheshire, also known as Charlie Lawson, who's of course the Coronation Street legend who played Big Jim McDonald. So it was, who gives us a ring every now and again. It's great to hear from him, and his views are much welcomed, as are yours. 0344 499 1000. Olive says, why isn't this group arrested? Surely that's an incitement for hate and violence. Others will be imprisoned already, as we have seen. Nigel says, totally agree with my former platoon commander Mark Francois on the matter of Kneecap spouting their vile diatribe. It needs to be silenced. I usually say I may not agree with your opinion, but will defend your right to have and voice it, a la Voltaire, of course. Not on this occasion, says Nigel in Doncaster. George says, I doubt Glastonbury will cancel Kneecap. The bulk of the crowd will be lefty-leaning and probably agree with the nasty and hatred-inciting rhetoric expressed by this band of numbskulls, says George. Pat says, Lucy Connolly is in prison for a WhatsApp message. I think it was a Facebook post, actually, Pat. Why haven't Kneecap been arrested for inciting violence? What is the difference between the two? Why haven't they been arrested? That's what I want to know. We'll take more of your calls on this and immigration and everything else. We're going to talk. We've got a lovely story coming up as well about a really interesting military family. You're going to want to hear that in just a few minutes here on Talk.
Take my local corner shop guy, for example. He's regularly being targeted and doesn't report it because it might be 6, 7, 8 quid that he's lost, and he knows it'll take him so much time to fill in the online form.
Right.
Quite simply, he'd rather be serving customers trying to make up his losses. Now, if that's a bit unscientific, I know, but roll that out across the country, and I'm utterly convinced there are many, many more offences of shoplifting that are just simply not being reported.
Yeah.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, the Pope's funeral commemorations are taking place in the Vatican City at the moment. The streets of Rome outside the Vatican City are paved with many people who are waiting for a procession to take place to his final resting place, which will not actually be the usual chapel, where the Sistine Chapel, where many popes are buried. It will actually be a smaller chapel where a smaller church, I should say, where the Pope often prayed. So the burial is to take place in the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, and that will happen a little bit later on. We know that, as well as the silences and the hymns and the liturgy that is being celebrated in Rome and at the Vatican City at the moment. What we also know is that many leaders are having meetings as well. Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky had a one-on-one in the last few hours as well. So it's a big occasion, of course, for many huge figures on the diplomatic stage. We know that Prince William is there representing the United Kingdom, for example, and that is something we'll continue to follow over the course of the next hour or so when the programme is on. I'm here until 12:30. Thank you to everybody who has been in touch on Twitter or sending me messages in some other way. On Twitter, Titus says, I only caught the last minute or so of your interview with the Labour MP. That was Chion Wara, who was on about an hour ago. Well done for her to go on talkTV, but disappointing today. She's pushing the same old nonsense from Labour. Trust didn't crash the economy. There was no 22 billion black hole. Titus, I'm afraid I have to disagree with you. Liz Truss did crash the economy. That did factually happen. I'm afraid you may not want it to have happened, but it did happen. Angela says, sorry, but what you have just said on Peter Cardwell's programme, Chion Wara, has angered me. People are so much poorer, disillusioned and fearful. I'm afraid that your party, the Labour Party, are ignorant as to how people really feel. Thank you to Sandy, who has talked about Kneecap as well. Kneecap, the rap band telling their cheering concert goers to kill your local MP. Well, Sandy says the singer who called for the death to all Tory MPs should be in prison. It's no difference to what Lucy Connolly did. Two-tier justice. And Marx made that point on WhatsApp messages as well, saying it's the same for illegal immigrants. How can they prove they're not terrorists? If not, they demand tax and threats and menace. They should all be in prison. Lots of people getting in touch on the Kneecap matter as well. Another person says the Labour MP you had on has the cheek going on about finances they inherited being so bad when Labour are throwing money away hand over fist on every country except the UK. This person also says the Labour MP still refusing to apologise to Rosie Duffield, still not even condemning terror threats against her, still both siding the trans issue as if any trans woman has ever received death and rape threats from women. In fairness to Chion Wara, I did think that she was thoughtful on the matter. I think she could have gone further. Of course she could have. I think Keir Starmer should go further, and we do need to have a proper debate about this, although to be honest there's not much of a debate left after the Supreme Court quite rightly decreed about a week and a half ago now that women are women and men are men. Wendy says all those who fuel the division and hatred just to appease the far left, extremely misogynistic trans activists are cowards who are not fit for public office. They have made matters worse for genuine trans people who just want to live their lives quietly and in peace. Lots more messages as well about the matter of Kneecap, including a voice note from the MP Mark Francois. He's going to join us on the programme tomorrow, but today this is what he has said about the Irish rappers who've told cheering concert goers to kill your local MP. They've shouted the only good Tory is a dead Tory. They've previously praised Hamas and Hezbollah as well. This is what Mark Francois has sent us in today to let us know his thoughts on this.
What these so-called pop stars have said about murdering Tory MPs is beyond despicable. My best friend in Parliament, Sir David Amess, was murdered in the line of duty, serving his constituents, as indeed was the Labour MP Jo Cox. What these people have said is unconscionable, and I hope they will be fully held to account for inciting violence, including against people in public life. What they have done is simply inexcusable.
Well, that's Mark Francois. He'll be in the studio tomorrow. Maybe we'll have more of a discussion about this then and a few other matters as well. Dorothy in East Kilbride, thank you for your message on WhatsApp. She says, good morning, Peter. I would like to thank yourselves and Talk for highlighting the incitement of hate and violence from Kneecap. We must speak out and say what is not acceptable. They must be held to account, arrested and jailed as anyone else would be. Great show as always, says Dorothy. Paula is in High Barnet and has given me a ring on this, 0344 499 1000. Paula, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, good morning, Peter.
Good morning.
Hi. Well, the first thing I would say is I'm of Irish descent. Well, I'm an Irish citizen, born in the UK, but of Irish parents.
Okay.
What I would say, it appears to be, for me, a trend. If you remember last year, the Eurovision Song Contest, there was an Irish representative, Bambi Sugg. She was determined, and she was very, very vocal, and she was the lead vocal in trying to get Israel disqualified from the Eurovision. Now, recently I found out the Israeli embassy in Dublin has been closed.
That's right.
And I've got a lot of family who are of Irish descent who live in the north of England and also live in rural Ireland. And the older generation don't hold this view. So for me, it appears to be the younger generation. It appears to be a trend. And to be seen and to be heard at Glastonbury, to be seen and to be heard at Coachella. Yeah, I support this, because we are on the right path. They're misled. They've been indoctrinated. Because, like my mother has said, she's from Dublin. Innocently, she's 70, in her late 70s. She said, "What did they ever do to us? What did the Jewish people ever do to us?" And then I got talking to a stranger who was from Ireland in Manchester, as you do. And again, she was around the same age. She was moving back to Ireland, and we got on the subject of this. And she was the one who told me the Israeli embassy had been closed.
Yeah.
She said exactly the same thing. What did the Jewish people ever do to us as a people? Nothing.
There's so much anti-Semitism, there's so much hatred out there, Paula, and there are young people who love this band, who think their music is wonderful, and they're supporting them, and that really, really worries me, that someone will go to a concert and will hear people say things that are anti-Semitic, who are praising organisations that are proscribed organisations, and at this particular one, will talk about killing MPs and Conservative MPs.
Peter, can I just also say that if Ireland is not careful, because apparently Mr. Higgins...
Yeah, Michael D. Higgins,
apparently he had said something that basically endorses this.
He's an anti-Semite. He is an anti-Semite. Yeah. He can sue me if he wants to. He is the President of Ireland, Michael D. Higgins. He is an anti-Semite.
And if Ireland is not careful, because it has a good relationship economically and socially with the US, as it does with the EU. But if it's not careful, it will polarize itself. Because, at the end of the day, the Americans could just pull out. Yeah. If Trump sees this and this carries on, he may decide he wants Google back, he wants the pharmaceuticals to pull out.
Well, I think it could be very bad for Ireland. I think they've changed their tune a little bit recently, Paula, but very, very interesting points there. Just to say, on the screen we're watching the procession of the Pope's funeral procession. This is going towards the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore. That is a place where he prayed a lot as Pope and in Rome. It was a place that he always returned to. Anytime he went away, he went back to the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, and that is where his body will be laid to rest. And if you're watching on the screen at the moment, you're seeing that procession. Now, of course, there are police outriders there. There is a large white vehicle as well. It's going through a tunnel just at the moment, but it will come out and will process to that basilica where the Pope will be laid to rest, which is outside the walls of the Vatican. It's a slightly different thing. Very few popes haven't been buried in the Vatican City, but Pope Francis obviously did things slightly differently to other people. I want to talk in just a second about a really, really epic challenge, riding from the Kelpies in Scotland down to a charity event, the Forces Equine Games in May. And this is a 5-day trek that Major David Heath French is going to be doing. He's from the Royal Army Medical Services. We're going to be having a chat about that in just a second. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, the procession of the Pope's body, of course, in the funeral procession is taking place in Rome. He's on his way to a basilica that he often prayed at, and those pictures are on the screen at the moment. Of course, there are 1.4 billion Catholics in the world, 6.3 million of them here in the United Kingdom, and they are commemorating the incredible life of Pope Francis. He was a very different Pope. He did a lot of very different things, and had a much more liberal outlook than many of his predecessors, certainly Benedict XVI. We can see on the screen as well hundreds of thousands of people lining the streets of Rome who are applauding the Pope and that procession as it goes past. There's obviously a large line of cars, including a very, very large hearse, police outriders as well, and the procession taking place through the streets of Rome there outside the Vatican City. Unusually, he's not being buried in the Vatican City. Most popes are, but he's not. He's going to a basilica where he often prayed. In fact, when he came back from foreign trips, he would go to that basilica and pray there as well. So we'll perhaps keep that on the screen or dip in and out of that a little bit between now and 12:30, because there is, of course, so many people watching the Pope's funeral around the world. But I want to come back to the United Kingdom now, because we have Debbie and David in the studio. Heath French, great to have you with us. David is a major in the Royal Army Medical Services, and you're involved in the Forces Equine Games, but actually getting there is going to be perhaps a little bit more of a trial than, you know, hopping on the train or going in the car. David, tell us what you're up to.
So on behalf of our not-for-profit organisation, Forces Equine, I'm doing a charity cycle ride from the Kelpies just outside Stirling all the way down to Coventry. It's about 650 kilometres over 5 days. And the idea behind it is to try and raise as much money as possible for our 4 charities that support our members, that are made up of the people within Forces Equine itself.
So tell us about those charities. We've got SAFA, who support serving veterans and families in the armed forces, the NHS charities Together, who support NHS staff, Police Care UK, who support serving retired partners and families of people in the police, and the firefighters charities, who do much the same thing for people who work in the or have worked in the fire service. Debbie, you're supporting David in all of this. Why have you chosen these charities?
Our members from Forces Equine are made up of those sort of communities. So we have serving dependents, veterans, ex-serving people in the police, the prison service, all those sort of things. And we wanted to really give something back to all of the charities. So we thought we'll try and raise this £10,000 and split it 4 ways, and yeah, try and make a difference, to be fair. Our main thing we try and support is mental health. And they all sort of touch base and support that, and horses give off pheromones, so that's why the two go really
So what
well
does Forces Equine do? Tell me about the mental health aspect of that and what you do at Forces Equine.
So Forces Equine, we have an annual show every year, and we bring like-minded individuals together. It's great because if they've had a bad week at work or a couple of months or whatever, they can talk to like-minded individuals who really understand what they're going through, and they can take it as seriously as they want to. We've had people go off to Global Champions, which is a massive deal, Royal Windsor, or you've got low-level people like myself now that just want to enjoy time with their horses and time with people that are in the same boat. Or
and you yourself, you're a veteran of Royal Signals in the British Army, and you've had your own battles with mental health, haven't you?
Yeah, I got diagnosed with PTSD in 2003. It wasn't to do with service, but I was still married to somebody in the military. It was to do with the death of my son. So I know what it's like to try and get out of bed every day and just go, come on, today's going to be a good day. And I do it really well, and I run my own business, and I run Forces Equine for nothing, which is what we all do. So yeah, I know what people are going through, and it's just geeing people along. I get lots of phone calls from our members who know they can talk to me, and I know I can talk to them. So yeah, it's a really good organisation. I'm very proud of it, and so is David.
And David, you're heavily involved as well. Why did you decide to do the bike ride? This is a different type of trusty steed to raise money for Forces Equine.
Yeah, well, I mean, we always try and raise money year on year through Forces Equine and through Forces Equine Games. But we wanted to go a little bit step further. So we came up with the idea that I like to push myself through certain physical challenges. So I decided to take on this particular ride.
Have you ridden this far before?
No, I haven't. So up until last year, it was the first time I'd been on a bike for 25 years.
Wow.
So that was interesting. And I did a little coast-to-coast ride last year just as a kind of a warm-up challenge.
As you do. You know, where do you sleep and where are you going to sleep? Because surely if you ride too much or too little, you're going to have to sleep somewhere else. You can't just decide where it is over the 5 days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there is a bit of planning to it. So we do have the luxury of staying in a nice warm bed in a hotel every night. So all we have to focus on is just covering our distances throughout each day and each challenge, knowing that, you know, we can just sort our kit out, get some food and get some sleep, and then get up and do it all over again the next day.
And is it just you, or are there others taking part as well?
There's a couple of other people who are supporting me along the ride, and they're doing like maybe a day or 2 days with me.
Yeah.
But ultimately it will be myself doing the whole 5 days.
And the sort of the end of this then is the Forces Equine Games. I don't know about that. Debbie, tell me a bit about what happens there.
So the Forces Equine Games is a 2-day event annually that we do. It's happening at Western Lawns, which is the Western Lawns Equestrian Conference and Event Centre down in Coventry and Bedworth. And the guys will be able to come down and do show jumping, dressage and what's called combined training. So that's basically the 2 events together. We'll have overall champions. It's got great sponsorship, all of our sponsors, and we're getting more every day that are getting involved. Like Blackheart Equestrian, they're brilliant. They give us rugs. So they've given us 50 show rugs, which our guys just love and cry when they win them. But it's a great event. It really is a great event. All we pray for is sunshine.
Of course. And horses are such an incredibly important part of what the forces do, aren't they? They help so many of our servicemen and women. And David, how important have horses been in your military career?
Well, I haven't worked directly with military horses, but I do know an awful lot of people within the mounted regiments within the armed forces. Obviously, they make up as some of our members, but also we have people who are mounted police as well, up and down the country, and even the other services like the NHS and the fire service and the other supporting agencies. They have their own equitation associations, their own teams, so they go out and compete at things like Royal Windsor, where they can dress up and get into uniform and compete against each other. And Forces Equine Games is just an extension of that. We bring people together, represent their own communities and compete against each other and have a bit of a laugh at the same time.
Does it get pretty competitive, Debbie?
Yes. They claim it doesn't, but yes, it does.
Of course it does.
Yeah,
of course
they do.
it does. That's
they
great.
all want to win a frilly or a no, it does. They do. Yeah.
Great stuff. And Debbie, if you want to support you and you want to support David, what's the best way to do that?
So if you go to our website, which is fegames.uk, you can go to /donate if you want to donate. But if you go to fegames.uk, you can see the challenge, charity challenge. Everything is listed on there. And also, if they want to get involved in the event, they want to compete or come down and support or sponsor, just visit the main website. All the information is there, Peter.
Great stuff. Debbie and David, thank you very much, and thanks for coming into the studio as well. On that website, one more time, is fegames.uk. David's doing the bike ride, and then it's the equine games are happening, so he'll have certainly been on a couple of saddles anyway as time goes on. So thank you both very much to Debbie Heath-French and Major David Heath-French as well. He's in the Royal Army Medical Services. In a moment we're going to talk about the immigration row that Keir Starmer is involved in, because there are plenty of homes now, essentially homes that are rented out, that are now going to be given to asylum seekers. I wonder what you think about that. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Glenn's been in touch from Leeds and says, I can't afford a mortgage. There's no social housing for single white men while we're at the back of the queue. I'll have to rent privately. I can't because of all the private housing and it's full of migrants. Looks like I'll go to have to live in a hotel. And on the Kneecap controversy, we're talking about this band as well that are involved in this. They've been chanting, kill Tories and kill MPs, kill your local MP. It's a really, really horrendous thing, and I know the counter-terror police have been alerted to that. Nick in Horsham says, good morning, Peter and the team. Great listen, as usual. With regards to the Kneecap clip, you have brought to our attention they have every right in the democracy that we live in to state F the Tories if that is their choice. However, with regard to the rest of the video, it is at best hate speech and should be dealt with as such, but ultimately it is an outright call to commit murder. Let's see what two-tier government and police do about this. Keep up the good work giving a voice to the voiceless in the UK. Thank you, Nick. We will continue talking about that. Plenty more to come between now and 12:30 here on Talk. Stay with us.
take my local corner shop guy, for example. He's regularly being targeted and doesn't report it because it might be 6, 7, 8 quid that he's lost. And he knows it'll take him so much time to fill in the online form.
Right.
Quite simply, he'd rather be serving customers trying to make up his losses. Now, if that's a bit unscientific, I know, but roll that out across the country, and I'm utterly convinced there are many, many more offences of shoplifting that are just simply not being reported.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, the coffin of Pope Francis is just going past the Colosseum in Rome at the moment. It's going around the outside of that, and it's on its way to its final resting place in Basilica, where Pope Francis has prayed at various occasions and will be laid to rest. This is in Rome. If you're listening on the radio, I'm just telling you what's on the screen at the moment, a large white hearse which is bringing the Pope's coffin. People are seeing it, people lining the streets, hundreds of thousands of them applauding as the Pope's coffin goes past there. And the Vatican saying that about 250,000 people have attended the funeral in Rome, in the Vatican City, of course, of Pope Francis II. It's on its way to be buried, the coffin, at the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, which is in another part of Rome. So it's travelling there at the moment. We'll bring you up to date, of course, with what's happening with the Pope's funeral right throughout this programme I'm on until 12:30. But in the meantime, I want to speak to Kevin Saunders. Kevin is a former Chief Immigration Officer at Border Force. Kevin, thank you for joining me this morning. And there is a controversy in the Telegraph newspaper. This is Starmer renting homes for Channel migrants, an appeal to landlords for more properties with house rising to house rising numbers crossing in boats. Are we running out of hotels? Is this something that's happened previously, or is this new, Kevin?
Mary.
So our entry.
Hello.
Sorry, we just had a slight problem with the audio there, Kevin. Can you hear me there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great stuff. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, what we're seeing is the Labour government want to move people out of hotels and into privately rented property because they say it's cheaper. The trouble is that it's going to mean that people already on housing lists are going to get bounced off them. And that is going to upset lots and lots and lots of people. But if that's
many will argue, Kevin, that it's just not fair at all, especially if you've been on a housing list for a long period of time, that housing perhaps of multiple occupancy, maybe landlords thinking, right, well, we'll allow people on social rents or whatever to come in to those homes, and instead they'll be saying, right, well, we'll get more money from Serco or a company like that to house migrants.
Yes, they will indeed. And it's interesting to note that the contract that the government are offering is for 5 years. So that means that the government obviously don't envisage solving the Channel problem within the next 5 years.
And even if they did, Kevin, presumably they would have to pay out that contract anyway. If they come up with some magical solution in a year's time, presumably they would have to honour that contract anyway.
Yes, they would. They would indeed. But it really just goes to show, Peter, that the government have just absolutely got no idea what they're doing on the Channel. With numbers up 44%, you're going to have to house an awful lot more people this year, and that's even before the really nice weather starts. I mean, if we were talking next week, next Saturday, when the temperatures are going to be up in just up to 27, 28 degrees, we're going to see people coming across the Channel en masse, even worse than it is at the moment.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean, and I think that there is certainly a lot of consternation about this. Interesting as well that Donald Trump has begun removing migrants to Rwanda, which is an interesting one. This is less than a year, obviously, after Labour came into power and axed the Conservative scheme. I wonder what you think about that, Kevin.
Well, of course, the Americans don't have the same problem with the European court that we have. And, of course, our courts tell us Rwanda isn't safe. The Americans say sing off a different hymn sheet. But it really does go to show that in the United Kingdom, the courts run the country and not the government. And Labour haven't got a clue what they're doing.
They would say, of course, they have the asylum and immigration bill. They say they're going to smash the gangs. They say they do have a plan, and they're having more cooperation with the French, for example, to try to get more action on that. Do you just not have any faith in any of that, Kevin?
I'm afraid I don't. I looked at the figures this morning, and I don't see any downturn in the number of people crossing the channel. The government can say really what they like. The only real measure of how successful or not they are being is how many people are getting across the channel. If the numbers stop, then we will all take our hats off to the Prime Minister and say what a wonderful job you've done. While they are continuing in the numbers that they are, well, it's just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. We are losing, Peter. We are losing en masse here.
Do you think the Conservatives got it? And do you think Labour, you're saying Labour haven't got it, they don't realise what the problem is, and they're not doing anything substantive anyway to deal with it. Was the Conservative approach better? Is there another political party out there that has a solution to this that you see?
I would like to have seen Rwanda given a chance. Now, I don't know if it would have worked or not. I think it would have done. The feedback that we were getting was that the migrants in Calais were thinking twice about coming over while Rwanda was on the table. We even saw them going to Ireland instead of staying in the UK, and the Irish complaining about it. So I would have liked to have seen it given a chance. If it had worked, then we would have been okay. We haven't given it a chance. We have nothing else to do. So they are going to just come flooding across. It's all very well the government saying we're going to send people off to the Balkans, to relocation centres there. But until they actually do something, then they won't. The thing about the Americans, I take my hat off to them. Trump says he's going to remove people. Next week, he's removing them.
Yeah.
And not only is he removing them, he's got the press there showing them being removed. You know, we don't do anything like that. I cannot recall ever seeing a plane taking off from the UK with the media there, filming it, being full of migrants.
No, I know what you mean. Kevin, thanks for your thoughts on that. Kevin Saunders, their former Chief Immigration Officer at Border Force. Appreciate his comments. If we just go briefly to Rome, we can see at the Basilica of St Mary Maggiore, St Mary Major, essentially, that is where the Pope is going to be buried. And at the moment what is happening is his coffin is being taken out of the white vehicle and is being moved onto a sort of red velvet catafalque, and that is happening at the moment. That is at St Mary Major there at the Pope's funeral, and it's a very, very beautiful building, a beautiful basilica there, and that is where that is nearby, of course, at Vatican City, is where about 250,000 people have been attending Pope Francis's funeral. But at the moment there are quite a number of pallbearers who are moving what is quite a heavy coffin there. They're moving that onto a sort of a velvet catafalque there. So that is what is happening. So that is just on the screen at the moment, and it's obviously a very heavy coffin, and the many cardinals are filing into the church itself to pay their final respects to Pope Francis, some of them removing their caps there, of course. And we know that at this Basilica of St Mary Maggiore, that is where Pope Francis has decided to be laid to rest, not inside the Vatican City, much like many other popes previously. So we'll continue to keep you updated about what's happening at the Pope's funeral there. Penny in Essex has been in touch and says the way Labour is treating us and their people who pay them handsomely for their privilege, there are going to be serious consequences because everyone has had enough. Riots will happen, says Penny. I sincerely hope they don't, but we've seen some of them already, of course. Elaine is in Derbyshire and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Elaine, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
I wanted to say, I think this is a case of luxury beliefs. There was a book called by Rob Henderson about this.
Yeah, I remember Liz Truss talked about it, yeah.
And until elites start feeling the issues, for example, with the feminists, they weren't really on board with free speech ever. They were quite comfortable with cancelling people, calling people far right, until, of course, they weren't able to say that men weren't women. And then, of course, they started to understand why you needed free speech. In America, you saw the elites in California saying, you know, wanting to control race, immigration is racist, until they had homeless people defecating on their lawns.
Yeah.
And then they decided, actually, this is not so great. And until you have the likes of, you know, homeless encampments outside Chiswick at that, you know, well-known you know, presenters' home, and those, not that they should do that, but...
No, I know what you mean, but there's so many, as you correctly say, there's so many people who say, oh, what's the problem with having, you know, a migration centre in your neighbourhood? OK, we're having one in your neighbourhood, we're having one in your street, and then suddenly those people will start to care and say, oh, actually, we don't want that.
It's like in Scottish people were quite like, you know, how racist is the English, until they got overrun migrants, and now you're starting to hear lots of people in Glasgow say WFT, what is happening here? And this is the problem. Until my grandma used to say, those who can't hear must feel, and until they start feeling it, they're not going to change, because they can get private healthcare, their children can go to private school,
and they can insulate themselves from all that's going on. Elaine, I think you make some very, very good points there, and thank you for them. If you want to add your thoughts to what Elaine is saying, 0344 499 1000 is the number. As the Pope's coffin goes into St Mary Major Basilica, we will continue to follow that and talk about many other things here on Talk in the next half an hour. Stay with us.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? And we'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. The best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips in Leeds, it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us carry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12.60. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
A couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. We're following, of course, the funeral of Pope Francis. We will bring you the latest from there. You can see various cardinals and archbishops walking through, and indeed the coffin of Pope Francis. This is at St Mary Major Basilica in Rome. This is not at the Vatican. It's a few miles away, and we can see the pallbearers there. If you're watching on the screen, I can tell you that pallbearers are carrying the Pope's coffin. I think there are perhaps 10 of them, because the coffin's going to be very heavy, a very special one, of course, and the cardinals are following that, leading that, some of them, and following that as well, because Pope Francis is being laid to rest. 250,000 people went to the Vatican City to see that funeral happen. The funeral is now over, and there'll be another service as part of the funeral commemorations, of course. You can see just on the screen right now those 10 pallbearers who are carrying the Pope's coffin into St Mary Major, St Mary Maggiore in Italian, the basilica where he wants to be buried. In fact, I think it's 12 rather than 10, so clearly they're being very, very careful. And of course there are more than the usual number of pallbearers usually with a coffin. I know I've carried a few coffins myself. It's usually 4 or 6 maximum, but at St Mary Maggiore it is something very, very different, and of course the Pope's funeral is a very different type of funeral. There's lots more to discuss between now and 12:30. We're going to talk about Trump, and he's been meeting Zelensky in the margins of the funeral today. He has been in Rome for that, as has President Zelensky. We'll talk about that and see if there's any progress that has occurred. We'll also make sure we get your voice on the air, and if you want to get your voice on the air between now and 12:30, give me a ring. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 722 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, and remember the main number. There's 3 things. You can send me a voice note. We'll hear a few of those in a second. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, or you can give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. There's some children there, as we can see, in St Mary Maggiore, laying flowers for the Pope at the altar there. And the coffin is proceeding on its route to where the Pope will be buried. We see some of the Swiss guards there as well. Apparently to be a Swiss guard, believe it or not, you've got to be over 6'2", you've got to be Swiss, and of course you've got to be a Catholic. So I'm afraid I won't qualify on 3 separate marks there, but we will continue to look at the Pope's funeral and bring you the updates there between now and 12:30. Lots to discuss on lots of other matters too here on Talk. Well, Joanna in Salisbury's been in touch to say, hey, Cardi P, it's a really silly question, but at what point will Keir Starmer actually see we are full as a country, North Africa and all the other countries, pouring out people with the size of a blip on a map, housing, job, services, that doesn't even mention money. Sue says we should not be housing immigrants. They should be in detention centres with minimal amenities, preferably outside the mainland, and no legal aid. Maggie in London says, is the leader deliberately poking the indigenous Brits purposely with his new proposal of housing illegal migrants above his own people for housing, enticing unrest amongst us? He is definitely not reading the mood of the country. He is unbelievable, says Maggie in London. We spoke to a Labour MP called Sian Wara a little bit earlier on, and Nick has been in touch with his views on that.
Good morning, Peter. Nick Moore from Loughborough. Your recent interview with Chi, I was beginning to warm to the lady until she started rolling out the usual Labour mantra about finding a £22 million black hole only when Starmer took office and blaming the other problems on global conditions. I think that proved that she's amongst the Labour elite, and I'm now certain that the newly appointed Labour MPs on the red wall who expected a long ride on the gravy train will soon be realising it's going to hit the buffers, and they'll be wanting to change the driver. The party is heading into ignominy. Have a good weekend, Peter.
Nick, very interesting thoughts there, and I enjoyed your metaphor there of the train. It was said in a recent book, actually, by my friend Patrick McGuire and Gabriel Pogrund, that Starmer was the driver of the train, but it was one of those trains in southeast London, the Docklands Light Railway, where there actually isn't a driver. It's an automatic train. So an interesting thought on that. Just one more voice note I want to play from Judith. This is on Kneecap. This is the band, the rappers, and Judith's thoughts on the rappers who said that the only good Tory was a dead Tory. This is what Judith has to say.
Morning, Peter. Judith here from Radlett. Oh, gosh, just when I think it can't get any worse, you're reporting on this band, Kneecap, whatever they're called. I mean, Voltaire must be spinning in his grave. I'm sure that wasn't what he intended when he said, "I defend your right to have," well, to paraphrase, "the difference of opinion from me and your right to your own opinion." The other thing is, I'm sure not only can I'm sure they couldn't even pinpoint Gaza on a map either. I think they have just got absolutely no clue. It makes me sick to my stomach that, as you say, people are languishing in prison for something they posted in the height of the moment and took down 3 hours later. And these people get away with saying this. It sickens me, Peter. Anyway, I'm going to enjoy the rest of my morning walk with Sadie. Have a great show. Bye.
Judith, thank you to you. I hope you and Sadie had a good exercise and a good walk, and I hope you've got the radio still on and you're listening to us. Thank you for your voice note there. We'll continue talking about Kneecap a little bit later on before the end of the programme at 12:30, but I want to speak about matters American now. Steve Gill is a former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations and joins me now. Steve, hello, how are you?
Hey, Peter. Be with you, and on the migrant issue, let me just point out that I think Labour could really help their poll numbers.
Sorry, Steve, we just have a slight audio problem. Let's see if we can sort that out. I was hearing two people talking there. We'll just sort that out in just a second. But I mean, it was very interesting that I saw a picture of Zelensky and Trump together in Rome, two chairs in a large ornate room earlier on today, just having a chat. And certainly the migration issue, as you say, Steve, a big one in America.
Yeah, and I think Labour could improve their poll numbers if they would just keep announcing they're going to get apartments for these migrants. As long as they announce the apartments were going to be in France, then they would see their numbers improve in England. The Zelensky-Trump kind of, running into each other is not going to lead to anything. One of my law partners and I just did a paper detailing Ukrainian constitutional and legal provisions that prevent Zelensky from doing any deal under their law that gives away territory unless there's a national referendum. Right now, there's a martial law that prevents him from facing election. They can't have a referendum to agree to give up territory as long as that's in place. So there is no domestic or diplomatic path to peace in Ukraine under their laws as long as Zelensky is president.
Yeah, and do you think Trump gets that? Do you think he understands that? Because my sense of this, and I could be totally wrong, Steve, but my sense of this is that Trump is doing a deal in his head. He's working it all out. He's talking to Putin, who's a bit receptive, but not really. And then Zelensky's sort of the next thought in all of that. But Crimea, for example, other areas of Ukraine that have been occupied by Russian forces, it's not going to fly, is it? It's not going to fly with the Ukrainian people, and they're not going to have these massive constitutional and land changes without major change, without major movement, which I'm not sure Trump can get. What's your assessment of that?
One of the reasons that we wrote this legal document, it's about 22 pages long, analyzing the law, is I don't think the U.S. side knows this. I think the Russians do. Zelensky probably does. But I don't think the negotiators on the U.S. side know, and we're circulating it among them, saying, guys, you need to know these barriers to a diplomatic solution because they're real, they exist, and it's troublesome. And I don't think they do know. Maybe they'll watch this morning and they'll have an idea.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually. We heard the other day, of course, that Trump said Russia and Ukraine are very close to a deal, hours after Steve Witkoff and Vladimir Putin held talks in Moscow. That was yesterday, of course. The mood music from the White House is coming out, certainly, that things are moving, but it's hard to say, of course. From the Russians' perspective, what's your assessment of how they're responding to all of this?
I think that, first of all, one of the other interesting things on the Ukrainian referendum, the territories that have already voted themselves overwhelmingly to join the Russian Federation, that would be, the Donbass area, the eastern Ukraine areas of Luhansk and Mariupol and Donetsk and Crimea, they get to vote in a national referendum. So the people that would be voting on whether to allow these territories to be traded for peace have already voted to join the Russian referendum. So I think the referendum would pass overwhelmingly. I think Zelensky would get beat if they had a presidential election in the country, which is why he can't agree to lift martial law and allow these elections, because he will be gone. I think that the U.S. and Russia are getting closer to a deal between them to lift sanctions, to increase the economic transactions between the U.S. and Russia that would, again, move things closer between Russia and the U.S. rather than continuing to push Russia closer into the arms of China. And I think that that's what ultimately is going to be where Ukraine will need to be as well if they want to rebuild, move on a path of prosperity rather than violence and war. But again, the people need to be able to vote. And where's that self-determination that we hear about when it comes to Greenland, when it comes to Gaza, when here it comes to other areas? Don't the folks in Ukraine have an opportunity for self-determination as well?
Interestingly, you mentioned migration just at the start of our conversation there. You'll remember the huge political controversy about a year ago when it came to sending migrants who come to this country to Rwanda. Well, now Donald Trump has begun removing migrants to, guess where, Rwanda, less than a year after Labour axed our own deportation scheme. An Iraqi man has been sent, more due to follow, according to the US media. Diplomatic cable touting the possibility of a full-scale removal programme for third country nationals. Many people here in the United Kingdom see what they think should happen here, Rwanda, or perhaps something like it, and they look across the Atlantic and they see Trump just doing it. Obviously, the power of the president is even greater than the power of a prime minister. But nonetheless, I would imagine there'll be frustration amongst many of our viewers and listeners who look across the Atlantic and say, hold on a second here, you're not being scuppered by European judges, you're not being scuppered by legal wranglings, you're just getting on with it and making it happen.
Well, we're being scuppered by our own, courts trying to stop things. One district court in one little territory trying to overcome the power of the presidency and the power of the votes nationally. But you're correct that we are seeing not only the stop of the flow of immigrants, illegal immigrants coming across the border. Trump has accomplished that. And you had Joe Biden in the previous administration saying he couldn't do anything to stop the millions that were coming across. And it turned out we didn't need a wall. We just needed a new president, because they have essentially stopped the inflow. The question now is, how do you get the 20 million or so that have come in over the last decade or so out? And many of them are starting to leave as you stop paying for housing, you stop paying for food stamps, you stop paying for medical benefits. When the freebies stop, many of them go back on their own. And I'm not sure, Peter, what's happening in the UK, but many of these people who come into the US seeking asylum, claiming it's too dangerous for them to be in their home countries, visit their home countries to see their relatives.
That happens too. That happens too. We've had some Ukrainians, for example, going back to Ukraine to visit relatives. If it's too dangerous, how can you visit your relatives? It's a very, very straightforward question. Steve, just before you go, I just want to ask you about net zero policies and this row that seems to have happened between Tommy Joyce, who is America's Assistant Energy Secretary, who told a conference in London, set to be attended by the Prime Minister and opened by Ed Miliband, who is no great favourite of our viewers and listeners, let me tell you, that climate zealotry, in Tommy Joyce's opinion, is a threat to economic and national security. Tommy Joyce, America's Assistant Energy Secretary, has said there is no national or economic security without energy security, and energy security is not possible without access to secure, affordable and reliable access to energy. Unfortunately, the focus during the last US administration was on climate politics and policies leading to that scarcity. These policies have been embraced by many, not just the United States, and harm human lives. Pretty clear what he was saying there.
Well, and we're already seeing the Trump policy of drill, baby, drill, reopening the spigot of America energy production, both with respect to natural gas and with respect to oil. And we've seen oil prices globally come down to about $60, $62 a barrel. Here in the United States, we've seen our gas prices drop from, in the $4 to $5 range into the high $2 range. So we're seeing the impact at the gas prices as well. But I'd go beyond what the Assistant Energy Secretary said. Scott Bessent told, basically the IMF and the World Bank, you guys have been too focused on social issues, on green energy, and on climate change, and not enough on actually improving the quality of lives of people who are embraced in poverty. And if you want the U.S. to continue to be involved in the IMF and the World Bank, we're going to get back to what the initial intentions were, which was to create business opportunities for people in poverty. And that's where the U.S. is going to be involved. And if that means doing something separate from the IMF or the World Bank, that's where we're headed.
Steve, thank you. That's Steve Gill there, who is a former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations. Thank you also to Roger, who's been in touch today. He says, my voice seems deeper than usual. I do have a little bit of a sore throat. I'm absolutely fine. I'll be here tomorrow between 10 and 1. Fear not. No issue there, but I have got a couple of lockets that I have been having. Other brands are available that I have been consuming during the breaks as well to try and feel a little bit better. But yes, I do have a little bit of a sore throat, but no, absolutely fine. No real issue there. Julian says the Labour MP chief from Newcastle is just your usual Labour MP. They haven't got a clue and don't understand regular people. I sent her an email 2 years ago. I'm still waiting for a response. Newcastle is falling to pieces like most Labour-run cities. Great show, Peter. Neil says Zelensky, for a president whose country is at war, has clocked up more air miles than the Speaker, David Lammy and Judith Chalmers put together, as well as the Green hypocrite David Attenborough. Very, very interesting, Neil. Judith Chalmers, gosh, I hadn't thought about her in quite a while. Leslie says, funny how lefty lawyers, campaigners and Labour MPs were at the airport preventing flights taking off, yet Starmer says thousands have been removed. No protests, don't believe it. Well, we can go back to St Peter's Square now. We can see that there are many thousands of people there. The Vatican saying that 250,000 people there to commemorate the life of Pope Francis. His body is now at St Mary Maggiore, St Mary Major Basilica, where he will be buried. We'll, of course, bring you the latest before the end of the show and all of that as well. Stay with us here on Talk.
Take my local corner shop guy, for example. He's regularly being targeted and doesn't report it because it might be 6, 7, 8 quid that he's lost, and he knows it'll take him so much time to fill in the online form.
Right.
Quite simply, he'd rather be serving customers trying to make up his losses. Now, if that's a bit unscientific, I know, but roll that out across the country, and I'm utterly convinced there are many, many more offences of shoplifting that are just simply not being reported.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who's been in touch, including Lorraine on Twitter, who says, come on, Peter, if you think Starmer wants to stop the immigrants, I have some swampland to sell you. I don't think he does, Lorraine. I was just putting the counterpoint to our guest a bit earlier. James says, do you think anything will happen to Kneecap, given that they hold such establishment-compliant opinions? Gib has been in touch on Kneecap with a voice note.
Morning, Peter. Judith here.
Peter, I find what this band Kneecap have said absolutely disgusting, and they should be punished.
Thank you, Gib. Appreciate that. Mark has also been in touch on Kneecap with a voice note.
Hi, Peter. Mark in Lincolnshire. Yeah, Kneecap. Obviously, absolutely vile what they're singing about. I'm all for free speech, you know. I mean, clearly these clowns know nothing about anything. I mean, where they come from in the world, they should know better. You know, inciting violence against anybody is just not right, is it? At the end of the day, you know, they should really just have a good think about, you know, where they're coming from. You know, believe are they from Northern Ireland, I think, something like that. They should know a lot better than this. And I'd suggest to anybody that, including that bunch of clowns, you know, if you want to listen to some good Irish music, then have a good listen to Cara Dillon, especially her song, There Were Roses, which always brings a tear to my eye about two friends, one's Catholic, one's Protestant, who both die for nothing they've done, just because one's Catholic and one's Protestant. You know, clowns like that should really pay some respect to that. Stop being absolute prats, quite frankly. Cheers, Peter. Great show as ever.
Thanks, Mark. A lot of sense spoken there. Kim has been in touch as well, said even the band's name refers to a nasty torture procedure used by terrorists, the band who were supporting Gaza. Probably don't realise that Hamas used the punishment for people in Gaza who disagree with them. Maybe they need to educate themselves, says Kim. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Kim, and if they were educated, they would know that shouldn't be used. The name of their band shouldn't even be that name. Just to reflect what's going on in Rome at the moment, we can see pictures on the screen now still of St. Peter's Square, where it's clearing out a little bit, of course, because there were many hundreds of thousands of people there, about 250,000 people actually, who had gone to that funeral there. And of course it is the main action now is happening in Basilica, St. Mary Major Basilica, which is where the Pope is being buried, and that is happening now. And there's another service there. We know in the margins of all of this, Keir Starmer's there, Prince William's there, we know in the margins of this there are numerous meetings taking place, including between President Trump and President Zelensky there, and we'll reflect that, of course, in the show tomorrow. I'm on between 10 and 1, but in the meantime, I'd just like to thank everybody who has been involved with the show today. Tom Willits has been the producer, the assistant producer has been Tommy Bateson, the setup producer was Chris Jacobs, the tech up was Tech Up Dave himself, Dave Rhodes, thank you to him. Visual producers Davis Fang and Luke Vincent, and the video editor has been Amin Asadi, not forgetting the weekend editor Dean Spencer as well. Well, coming up this afternoon, Talk Sport is going to bring you live coverage of the goings on at Stamford Bridge this lunchtime. Chelsea are hosting Everton. Later this afternoon, we'll have commentary of the first FA Cup semi-final between Aston Villa and Crystal Palace. That's like 5:15. And then tonight, Talk Sport brings you commentary of the grudge match as Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn are facing off in a middleweight boxing clash at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We've got full coverage of that coming up on Talk Sport. That will be quite the boxing match. I will be back tomorrow between 10 and 1. Lots to discuss. We have Kevin Hollingreck on, who's the Shadow Housing Secretary. We'll talk to him. Mark Francois is going to join us as well. He had some thoughts on Kneecap earlier. I'll be on Twitter later on today as well if you want to continue the debate with me. Tell me I'm right, tell me I'm wrong, whatever you want to do. But as I say, I will be back tomorrow between 10 and 1. I'll see you tomorrow morning. David Bill first, of course, between 6 and 10. And then I'm on at 10. I'll see you then.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10p, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12.60. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
A couple of weeks
A couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a... How much, ladies and gentlemen?